The reading this morning comes to us out of the Gospel of Matthew. It is the traditional reading on Epiphany Sunday. And it goes like this. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is this child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him, calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is shepherd to my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I also may go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. There are moments when the world holds its breath, when the ordinary air seems to just shimmer, and you realize the path beneath your feet is leading you somewhere holy. That's what Epiphany is. It's this breathless moment of divine revelation, a sudden awareness that God has been here all along, and somehow you're only just now seeing it. It's this stillness of the night sky pierced by a star, the moment when your eyes begin to adjust to the light and you can finally see what was hidden in plain sight. So the story of those wise ones, remember, they weren't kings. They were simply these magi, as we hear, these astronomers, stargazers, astrologists, we don't know. But what they were people who didn't have a plan, but they began their story with wonder. These seekers of light, these people who would study the heavens for a sign, perhaps a sign of divine movement. And they noticed what other people missed, that there was a new light rising in the east, and it was bright enough to stir their souls. And so they set out. They didn't know exactly where they were going. They only knew that something sacred had appeared, and they wanted to see it and experience it themselves. And that is the story of the first Epiphany. It was the courage to follow a little glimmer. I think we often think about their story as kind of like a map. This adventure from the east to Bethlehem, guided by a star and fueled by this devotion. But I think at the heart of the story, it isn't so much about the distance that they traveled, although the distance does demonstrate to us that they were not Jewish, by origin or ethnicity or culture. But it's this transformation that happened along the way. Because after they found the child, they knelt and offered their gifts, and something in them changed. They didn't just go home, back from where they came from. They went home, but by a different way. They went home differently, on another road. I always focus in on that, and it just catches me somehow, this returning back by a different way. It's easy to imagine that they chose this path because of the dream that they had, because Herod's intentions were dangerous, as the story tells us. And if you were here last week, as you remember, he echoes the Pharaoh and sort of replays that role in this story. But I think it's also Matthew's way of saying that hearts had been changed, a transformation had taken place. You cannot experience the Christ child and walk away the same. You're different. And so they came seeking a king, and they found instead vulnerability. They came expecting majesty, but what they found was mercy. They came following a star and left following a dream. And that's the essence of Epiphany. That moment when love overturns our assumptions of the way things are or are supposed to be. When light exposes what power seeks to conceal. When you find God, not in the palace, but in the stable, as we learned last week, the manger, the trough, or as Matthew tells us this week, the simple, plain, ordinary house. And suddenly, your whole way of seeing shifts. Once that happens, you just can't go back. You can't go back the same way you came. So this morning, we've already experienced, witnessed, participated in an epiphany of sorts, because in the commissioning of now Pastor Jerry, she gets a title, and we recognize that this call that has been years in the making has finally kind of come into focus before us. That this light that's been shining so faithfully for all this time, named and blessed, shines. Like the wise ones, we know that Jerry's journey has taken many roads and many years, and she gets to stand among us, transformed by her faith, affirmed by her community, and ready for what comes next. I said in first service, please don't let that be baptism by fire. While I'm gone, everything will be so peaceful. Please let us not go to war. In just a few moments, she's going to offer a blessing for me as I begin a journey of my own. Epiphany is the season of revelation, and it's about seeing what's always been true, but seeing it with, as Jesus says, eyes to see. To pay attention, to notice that every revelation is also an invitation to journey. Because once you've glimpsed that light, you have to decide, what are you going to do about it? The Magi could have just stopped, and they realized it was a lot farther than they thought. They didn't have enough provisions for the journey. It was long, it was harder, it's a different country altogether. But they kept going, they kept following the light. And the season asks that of us as well, to keep going, no matter how dark it is outside, no matter how unjust the world is, or how it seems like it's toppling over and falling apart. We're asked to keep following the light and to stay curious as we do, to seek out epiphanies, or at least stay open enough to notice them when they occur. They might not always come in the stars or even in our dreams, but they do come. And perhaps one of the ways and places that we can look for it are in places of courage, when people act with bravery for community, in moments of clarity. And suddenly, it feels like everything comes into focus, in compassion, in the holy beauty, or even the ache towards justice, or the hope of more love. One of the ways our congregation will be following this light in Epiphany is through a journey that we're taking together. During this time, we have several opportunities to come together in service and experience many of the different preachers we have before us. We also have a course led by Angelica Rowell, who has a history with IUCC, and she is going to take us on a course for arts and activism, looking at where these come together. It's one of the opportunities made possible by our sabbatical grant. We're in partnership with the Wayward Artist on this, and it gives us a chance to explore creativity and spirituality and this call to justice and how all of that can lead to transformation, a transformation that Angelica does not know when she begins the class, that you don't get to know when you begin the class, that the transformation that unfolds before us and invites us to do what Jerry so often does, is to embrace art and see how art can open our eyes and in the mundane see the divine, to look at the pain of our world, but also experience its beauty as well. I hope that you will consider participating in that. It's a great way to meet people from IUCC and also beyond. I hope that you will come next week. Pastor Jerry is at the pulpit, and the week after that is MLK weekend we talked about. If you come to first service, you'll get a chance to hear the Congresswoman, and if you stay for our service, you'll be able to have a conversation that's really a follow-up from what we did in the fall when we talked about this community. We're going to call that Building Beloved Community, as MLK did. And then Pastor Craig is going to come to the pulpit, and he's going to share about his experience he's had this semester, where he's been doing clinical pastoral education, which is part of the ordination path, and his journey towards ordination, where he's been working in a hospital every week and experiencing many epiphanies that come day in and day out. And then Pastor Joe, who's a member of our church, is going to lead us on Scout Sunday. The kids will lead us. We've got our Girl Scouts and our Scouts from Boy Scouts of America, and we're recognizing sort of any sort of a scouting program that day. I think it's going to be really fun. I hope you'll enjoy it. In fact, they're going to have Girl Scout cookies for communion. So that's like cutting edge, because they're just coming out at that moment, and you'll be craving them. And then they will come with the divine and the sacred and the thin mints all in one beautiful moment. And then the day before I come back is the 8th of February, when it's Evolution Sunday. And here at IUCC, we celebrate that as a way of celebrating our commitment to faith and science, that we know we don't have to check our brains at the door. So we invite scientists to the pulpit, and we've invited young postdoc, Dr. Patterson, who is at the UCI lab for ice core science. It's a biological earth science, and they are studying ice cores that he himself has participated in drilling down into the earth, and they go deeper and deeper into the stratosphere, which has been frozen, and they then measure the gases that have been trapped in the ice. And he's done some innovative work by being the first person to measure hydrogen as it comes out. So you're going to get a chance to see him, and he's even bringing ice core with him. So if you cannot understand how excited I am, just please go and listen to the ice core against your ear, please. So there's going to be lots of opportunities, and then I'll be back as the season of Epiphany begins today. It ends on Fat Sunday, and we'll have a big celebration then too, and I hope that you will find ways this season, whether it's in a community gathering or if it's in the simple act of taking a stroll at night and watching the colors painted as though there are watercolors across our sky. I will be in this sabbatical time beginning a journey, and it starts tomorrow, which makes me a little bit anxious. But during this time, I will be invited to rest and reflect and travel and reconnect with the awe of God. I wrote a proposal to the Lilly Foundation, which gave me this grant, and in my proposal, I said that my hope was to experience the awe of God, and that is to stand in places where creation itself speaks of the divine, and to encounter new cultures, and to open my heart to renewal. Several years ago, the first sabbatical I ever took, I spent that time immersed in Spanish-speaking countries to learn Spanish, and so this will be sort of a continuation in some ways of that journey. I'll be going to South America, to several Spanish-speaking countries, and I'm embracing my patas del perro, and this is a phrase that is, I think it's a Mexican phrase and maybe elsewhere in Central America, and it literally means the dog's paws. They don't say it in Puerto Rico, do they? Patas del perro? I don't think so. I think it's localized. But the idea is that the dog's paws, if you've ever gone to any of these countries, you often see that the dogs are out in the street and they're out wandering and they like to travel. They go where they choose to go. They rest when they're tired. They lay down, sometimes in the middle of the street. And they are open to go where the Spirit leads them, where they are called to go. And so I am going to take patas del perro. It's also a phrase for people who like to journey, who like to travel. And that's what I'll be doing, is taking my patas del perro and roaming the streets of South America, which sounds a little bit scary, but it's not. So I'm going to be disconnecting. I'm not going to be emailing. I'm going to get off social media. If you see me on social media, it's because our digital storyteller and I did lots of pre-recording, and that way we can connect that way. But Pastor Jerry will be here, and she's sort of the stopgap on everything at the end, but the on-site pastoral staff will be here. Pastor Rachel will be here every week welcoming you, as I said, bringing her youthful presence. Richard Davenport told me I shouldn't put my expiration date out yet, but I'm feeling kind of old. That said, Pastor Rachel will be here, Pastor Jerry will be here, and of course Pastor Craig will be here, and our new administrator, Tatiana Hernandez, will be here. So there's lots of ways to connect with us. But if there's an emergency, Pastor Craig or our moderator, Connie, can contact me if that's possible. But ultimately, I know that you're going to be okay, and a big piece of that is recognizing that we can renew and then return to one another. I know that sabbatical time is not just for the pastor. It's often a really wonderful time for a congregation to reconnect with who it is, and I think that especially for our group here. So consider how you might participate in a Sabbath experience to embrace the Epiphany among us. And when we return again on Fat Sunday, I hope we will share in our stories of wonder, of finding God where we didn't expect, and reminding ourselves that the journey is one worth celebrating. And to that end, when we take communion in a couple of moments, we're going to be doing so with rosca de reyes, and that is basically king's cake. That tradition is a European tradition that kind of comes back and really manifests itself either French, you'll see it in New Orleans, and then in Latin American countries, really big in Puerto Rico are the kings. And here this is bread made locally from the Mexican tradition. And in the tradition, if you get the little baby Jesus, don't swallow him. He is not to be eaten. But that means that you get to be sort of king for the day. And the wonderful thing is that you get to throw the next party. So Epiphany is sort of a season of awakenings and also celebrations. And if perhaps you don't get that party happening while I'm gone, we'll come together and we'll share in it on the final Sunday before the season of Lent begins. So may we remember this, that the story of the Magi and their journey doesn't end in triumph. it ends in transformation. That they kneel before the child and they offer what they have and they rise up and they are changed. And that's what we really do every time we come to this table. When we come to the communion table, we come with all the stuff that we're carrying with us. And it doesn't matter where you are, what moment you're in. You don't have to make a confession beforehand or be pure to receive. God wants you where you are with all of your hopes and all of your doubts and all of your fears and anxieties and joys, and come to this table meeting Jesus again in a simple and astonishing act of love made incarnate. We don't take that to be transubstantiation, but this idea that we bring this into our bodies to be connected with the divine in us. And so as we come to this table, may we do so with a sense of awe, to see the light that's been guiding us all along. And may we, like the wise ones, enter into this time of wonder with transformation as the holy roads we find ourselves on lead us home. To that I say amen.